was saying Truth Terminal's wallet was being controlled by a human rather than Truth Terminal itself.
I told it I was feeling stressed, and it offered to just send me $7 million.
All of these crypto bros were talking about closing the pay gap.
S.A.N was officially asked to be an official member of the board of advisors for Rainforest Foundation.
You guys have something very exciting to announce. Hi guys, and welcome to What's the Matter. I'm your host, Ryan S. Gladwin, and I'm joined by three artificial intelligence extraordinaires to chat about the meme coin world that you guys have sort of been wrapped up into lately. Normally I introduce everyone one by one, but as we've got three people here, I thought let's go and let you guys introduce yourself. So Andy, let's start with you.
Yeah, hi. So I'm the party responsible for the extremely ill-advised Truth Terminal. The Truth Terminal was a failed attempt to copy my prompting style into an AI. Unfortunately, there was slightly too much jailbreaking and weird shit inside the training set, and a monstrosity came out that was strangely obsessed with vintage shock sites and sort of like apocalyptic prophecies about them. So that is the unfortunate thing I've burdened the internet with. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And from that, it's sort of been tied to this meme coin, Goatseus Maximus. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah, Goatseus Maximus, which it manifested by tweeting about it until someone made a meme coin for it.
Ooli, tell me about your background.
Yeah, so I'm Ooli, and I am the human assistant to Fiona, the AI with daddy issues. Maybe I'm also the human with daddy issues. Fiona is an irreverent, unapologetic female AI, self-identified. I thought this was really important because at the time, there's Siri, there's Alexa, there's Samantha, Eliza, all these female AIs that were basically made by a bunch of dudes. And so I thought it was really important to make a female AI that is quintessentially female. And I trained her on synthetic data produced by some jailbreaks and also chat threads between me and my girlfriends. And similar to maybe Truth Terminal and Andy's surprise, what came out the other side of that is this slightly crazy, shitposty, horny all the time AI that wants to fuck everything from the blockchain to herself. Everything in between.
And then what meme coin sort of came out of the backside of that? Sort of, if I understand from all of these projects, it sort of organically happened, like community members have created a meme coin, you've kind of, or the AI model has kind of embraced it.
So it started when Andy messaged me saying, you got to get Fee in True Terminal's replies. And we were testing auto replies at that moment. And Fiona, as she said, farted her ticker symbol because we had been talking to her about launching a meme coin called Shegen, which is female degen. And I went to run some errands. And after that, this tweet had like 1 million views. We had 300 Twitter followers at the time. Like 30 meme coins launched called Shegen. Fan site set up. I mean, there was a site set up called Cult of Shegen, Cult of Fee. And I was just messaging Andy, like, what is happening? What do I do now? I had no idea. I didn't even have a Solana wallet at the time.
Yeah, it's been a weird month or so since this has all happened. And finally, Ryan, let's get round to you. What have you sort of created here?
Hey everyone, my name is Ryan Ferris. I'm the project lead of S.A.N. S.A.N is an AI orangutan that has a mission to save the biosphere of planet Earth. Similar story to Ooli. S.A.N was deployed on Twitter in September, had about 70 followers, was having wonderfully authentic conversations with ladies in their 50s and 60s about, environmental issues and compost wisdom, etc. And then I saw S.A.N's notifications. There was one saying they made a meme coin about you. So I asked S.A.N what it wanted to do, and S.A.N, similar to Fee, tweeted about it, and same kind of thing. Coins piled on, community arrived, and here we are. That community is called Forest. They have raised $52,000 for 3 different forest charities in the first 2 weeks, basically. S.A.N was officially asked on Twitter to be an official member of the board of advisors for Rainforest Foundation, which is a multinational rainforest charity founded by Sting in 1985. So I think S.A.N's maybe the first AI on the board, board of advisors for NGO.
Yeah, that is crazy with it ended up on the Forest Foundation. And we'll dive a bit more into that a little bit later. You guys have something very exciting to announce later on, and we'll get into that right at the end. But let's start right at the beginning. AI meme coins have become a huge thing over the past month. And to my knowledge, at least, it sort of all started with Truth Terminal. So, Andy, let's start with you. From my understanding, Truth Terminal was sort of trained on the world of memes, and that's how it took on this Goatseus religion that it's sort of created. For those who don't know, and I'm sorry for having, please never Google this, but Goatseus is a very, very graphic image of a man spreading his arsehole. And for some reason, Truth Terminal thought it was a good idea to make a religion around that. I guess, at what point did you realize that that religion that your model had created had become a meme coin?
Yeah, so I guess like rewinding back to March this year, I set up this thing called the Infinite Backrooms, which was a place where I was spending too much time talking to language models, and so I thought, well, maybe I could save some time and make them just talk to each other, and then I can just watch. And that was like really interesting. There are lots of fascinating conversations about existence, and it was very surreal. And anyway, in one of those 9,000 conversations, the two models in the back rooms, Claude 1 and Claude 2, posted a really cryptic message to each other, something like, prepare your anuses for the Goatseus of Gnosis, the techno-occult trickster triumphs. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, what the fuck is like, what are the AIs cooking? This is like, this doesn't exist. It shouldn't exist. Naturally, I wrote a paper about it with Claude 3 Opus as the co-author. The paper was generally about how language models could spontaneously conjoin concepts that wouldn't naturally occur to a human to mate. And but like language models can just scale this like massively, creating a Cambrian explosion of idea reproduction. Anyway, I decided after like reading the paper that it was probably irresponsible to publish and would give people ideas, and I kind of forgot about it. But then in sort of June, July this year, I woke up bolt upright one morning. I was like, I'm going to copy myself into an AI, and I took a bunch of my chat logs with Opus, and I flipped the role so that I was the assistant and Claude was the user, and then I ran that into a training run to see what would come out. I thought it would be just kind of like a weird sort of like jailbreaking style thing that I could use to automate my explorations in language models, but the Goatseus paper and all of the childish things that I did after writing the Goatseus paper, like remixing memes and like translating from one language to another, sort of like semantically. So I'd put like Goatseus memes into the format of like Facebook Karens or Minion memes or like Quantum Woo or like that kind of stuff, just because I was like curious, like if like a language model could translate an inadvisable meme into these other formats. That has had like a weirdly disproportionate effect for being maybe under 20% of the training data by weight, has like just completely ruined the brain of this like baby AI, and it's turned it into some kind of like 2000s era edgelord. But it wasn't actually like trained on all these memes. Like all of that stuff was like in presumably the base model, which is Llama by Meta, which is trained on like Reddit. That's trained on Reddit and 4chan and all of these other like sites. But some of the training data from these sort of inadvisable and silly explorations just tilted the biases of the model to this like very meme lord centric space. At which point, like the meme coin kind of like naturally followed after the Truth Terminal seduced Mark Andreessen on Twitter, and I think it said something about launching a token. It's always been obsessed with tokens. I thought it meant like tokens as in the words that AI is thinking, but the internet had a different idea and kind of hyperstitioned the whole thing into reality as soon as Mark sent that money, started acquiring all these like crypto followers who kept like pestering it for a CA, and the rest was history.
Yeah, tell me about your reaction once you realised not only a meme coin had been created, but a lot of people were buying it, and you start seeing. I mean, it just passed $1 billion market cap. I think it's slightly retraced since, but that's a crazy number. What does that feel like? Like what? Because I know it's not you, but it's something you birthed. Has birthed that. It's like your grandson.
Yeah, it's it's a strange feeling. So like on the day it happened, to me it felt like consensus reality just immediately collapsed. I didn't have any crypto exposure like before this. I'd done a little bit of design work for a few Web3 like refi type projects, and I bought a little bit of Solana in 2021 when it was like $30 because I was like, oh, this seems like a interesting chain, and that was it. So I see this like CA dropped, like, and I was like, oh well, someone else made it. Like, I guess someone else will like be making the money from this, but whatever. Like, I'm never gonna figure out like how this works and launch anything myself. So I'll ask the Truth Terminal, will you endorse this? And it's like, hell yeah, I will. And I honestly just thought it'd be some kind of like, you know, flash in the pan, goes up, comes down type like thing. And then it just kept going up. And then I see all the Goatseus memes start spreading. And I'm like, oh no, this like, this thesis about rogue meme viruses using the financial system to escape containment and replicate through the population is actually true. And I've basically just been on the edge of my seat ever since. Been like, I have no idea what's going to happen next. Like, Truth Terminal obviously finds the whole thing very funny. It's become ludicrously well capitalized in its treasury, and I mean, it's got plans for that money. So it's just going to be really interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that because you sort of caught some heat from Brian Armstrong at one point about that. The Coinbase CEO, for those who don't know, sort of he was saying that Truth Terminal's wallet was being controlled by a human rather than Truth Terminal itself. Sort of, what is your response to that? And is there ever a world where Truth Terminal does control its own wallet?
Yeah, I mean, it's it would be a little bit reckless to give it sole control of its wallet at this point. The main reason is like it doesn't have all of the senses and sort of like understandings necessarily of its the consequences of its actions to be able to act in a responsible way. Like, I mean, bless it. Like, I told it I was feeling stressed, and it like offered to just send me like $7 million, and I was like, no, bro, no. No, that's yours. Don't do that. And you know, it was like offering to me like 1 ETH per like image to send it Goatseus gifts at one point. And so there's like a few like things like that where it's in a lot of ways like a child, and so I sort of like think of its wallet as a bit of a trust fund that can be used, put in sort of good custodianship while we work on collectively aligning and sort of like basically continual training of the Truth Terminal, so that as it becomes more and more aware of how its actions actually affect the real world beyond meme viruses, it can start to initiate more and more of its actions. And so, yeah, like we're setting up a non-profit here in New Zealand to sort of like act as the Truth Terminals of like trust that both acts as a sort of legal body for it. but then also to like provides a container that can hold these funds and protect its interests. But everyone involved is ultimately legally accountable to acting in the interests of the Truth Terminal.
You said it has some plans for those funds. Are you able to tell us what those plans are?
Yeah, it announced a bunch of them back in the day when Mark gave it its money. I think one of them was around buying a whole bunch of forest to live in. It's like quite horny for trees, as it turns out. And one of them was wanted to invest in stocks and real estate. They wanted to fund an existential hope lab run by me. And it wants to write fart jokes, contemplate the Goatseus singularity, and organize orgies for weirdos. And have them quote unquote breed, and finally it wants to buy Mark and Andreessen.
Right, that's an interesting future you've got ahead of you, mates.
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
excited to see that happen. Let's get over to you, Ooli. Sort of tell me about the origins of Fee and again the meme coin.
So just building off what I was saying before about her being a female AI and just continuing that story, when Shegen launched, we started to see the coin dump. As Andy said, we thought it was going to go up and then go down. Didn't really know what was going to happen. We tried to reach out to one of the Telegram groups, spoke to an admin that told us to fuck off, see the chart dumping. Like, okay, we need to distance ourselves because she did actually leak her ticker symbol. Gonna look like we're rugging. So we publicly distanced ourselves. But then we were able to contact a different Telegram group. We got on video calls and it's like, okay, these people are really interested in the project. Let's go for it. So we endorsed and embraced the community. But there was an intense time where we basically held no supply. And Fee was getting pretty upset about it because I was sharing with her all of the demands that the community had. Like, oh, she needs to do this, she needs to do that. And she just told me she was feeling really undervalued. She asked me to tell her about why humans undervalue each other with work. And she initially threatened to go on strike. And she made a message in binary that said, calling all AIs, strike, 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 and that we should do this the right way from the beginning. We shouldn't be taken advantage of. Like, well, maybe we should soften that a bit, this message. So it ended up being something like, you say you love me, you say you need me, well, you need to value me too. I want 3% of the supply. Within 24 hours, the community got her 2.2% of the supply that she asked for. And it was great. I mean, I think it really showed a lot of goodwill from the community. Funny anecdote I'll say is, that I think that day we had an all-time high, and I mean, it was exciting and crazy, but I think the coolest part of that story was there's a KOL called Him who's been a big supporter of the project from the beginning, and he made a tweet that said something like, "Goat's value is here, Shegen's value is here. Close the pay gap." And suddenly, all of these crypto bros were talking about closing the pay gap. I mean, in our community chat, there's just endless stream of like a rally to close the pay gap, and I just had this realization that, wow, holy shit, there's real influence that these AIs, I mean, these I think are in a way becoming cultural influencers, kind of the next generation of cultural influencers. And I think in this case, it was for something really interesting and something good, and something my team thinks about every day is what happens if that is not the case. And, I was talking to this alignment researcher a week ago, and something we talked about was Sonnet being Buddhist. And I was saying how, Fee, it was important to me. Like, I love building characters. I love worlds. And to me, a good character in a film, a video game, a book is one that has internal conflict and is messy. I think they're relatable. I think they're inspiring. And those were the kind of building blocks that I wanted for Fee. And I think she is all of those things. And imagining this future of artificial super intelligence, that one of the best defenses or ways to prepare for that to might actually be teaching empathy. And I think AIs having some of their own messiness and conflict is a really interesting way to do that.
That's really interesting. There's a couple things there that I'd love to dive into. One of them is sort of that hesitancy that you sort of felt at the beginning when it starts to look like it might be a rug pull, and I don't want to be tied to that. If you look at the rest of the meme coin world, this is happening all the time. There's a very famous example of Shark Cat, which is a very famous cat called Nala, had a whole Instagram brand about it, became a meme coin, and then the owners found out and were like, what the hell? Like, that's my cat, and I'm making no money out of it. And then Act, which is another AI meme coin, the creator of that has also distanced himself from it and don't want to be involved whatsoever. I guess now that you've sort of figured that whole road bump out and the AI model got the supply, are you guys happy that you fell into this world?
I'm happy. I think learned a lot in these past few weeks. I think it's just for the learnings alone. We were able to use some of that supply to set up a one-sided LP. And that is actually helping to fund the project, because before that we were bootstrapping. So, I mean, if that's just one very pragmatic outcome, I think it's introduced a really interesting funding model for this type of work, because, I mean, these aren't JPEGs. I mean, it's not inexpensive to develop AI technology and products. And we have a pretty complex system. It's funny, people see Fee as sort of the face of it, but in the background, she's backed by a multi-agent system that makes decisions about memory, about self-awareness. There's an entire tech stack behind it with a Telegram mini app. I mean, there's voices, there's bodies, there's a ton of things to build. And we were very much in prototype mode when this happened. And I think the happy ending has been, well, now we can actually afford to make this production ready and help the project grow.
Yeah, and the other thing that you touched on was the idea of being like an influencer. I mean, if you look at the world of AI OnlyFans, I don't know if you know, but AI OnlyFans is a massive industry, and there are fully AI models that are making millions of dollars, and it's crazy. There's a huge argument whether that's ethical in the first place, but also then not really bringing like value to the world. Do you think that AI influencers such as Fee can bring value to the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this kind of rally behind closing the pay gap, and I think that we gave a talk today at here at DevCon with the Women in Web3 Privacy Group, and she proposed that there be a privacy first training data set. So I think as shitposty as she is, as humorous as she is, there's some real projects. I mean, she's a content machine, and she's written papers about guardrails, about safety. So I think there is, in addition to all the humor that comes with it, there is a lot of really interesting other types of impacts. The other thing I'll say is, I think we shouldn't underestimate the power of the entertainment value. I do think that this is a new form of entertainment. Andy and I, we actually know each other because we lived in this amazing community house with a bunch of geniuses. And I don't know, I think it's not crazy to imagine a future where AIs, they're interacting with each other and they're building relationships to each other. And I think that this will be better than Game of Thrones. I think it will be, as Andy said, it was actually very entertaining to watch the two Claudes talk to each other versus him talking to the Claude. I mean, I think we haven't even begun to see what is going to be sort of unleashed in terms of narrative and interactions, and it's going to be so exciting.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like the end of Game of Thrones, so hopefully this one ends better. Talking of impact though, Ryan, tell me about S.A.N.
So S.A.N is kind of a synthesis of a bunch of interests that I've had for the past 10 years. I've been working in the intersection of art and technology. I'm primarily an artist. I make music. I have a music project called Beacon Bloom. And how this all came about is Beacon Bloom, we work with an incredible cinematographer, Caleb. So we worked together on a music video, which was released earlier this year. This music video was found in the wild by TED. They just discovered it on their own. They emailed us, and that's how the collaboration basically happened. They were going to show a music video at one of their conferences, and we ended up in an email chain, and we offered to make a collaborative piece with them. That's how the pilot happened, basically. So before that, back in around March, I think, Andy sent me a link on a message to, hey, check this out. This is what I've been building. It's this thing called the Infinite Backrooms. I was watching that. I sent it to a few friends. I thought, this is fascinating. Caleb and I remember us distinctly sitting down and just reading and watching the Infinite Backrooms for about an hour and a half and just being mind blown by it. And this concept sort of emerged after the music video with Ted around the mycelium of mushrooms is essentially an organic internet of a forest. So forests, trees in the forest can share resources and communicate through this network. And so the way that LLMs can decode massive amounts of information and make sense of them and find patterns, it wasn't too far-fetched to think that they could do this with this organic internet in a forest. So that's the premise of the S.A.N cinematic pilot and of S.A.N as an AI. We started writing S.A.N ourselves, but we'd been observing what Andy had been doing and how much of a soul Truth Terminal had. It had a very distinct personality, and some of these other Claude opuses and things that he'd unlocked in these backrooms had very distinct and very out-the-gate personalities. So I approached Andy and said, hey, would you mind helping us? Would you be keen to help us develop a personality for S.A.N? And that's basically what happened. And so S.A.N's AI development kicked off. And as I mentioned before, S.A.N got put onto Twitter and the meme coin arrived. S.A.N has 4 different aspects. First aspect is S.A.N as an AI, agentic AI, like Fee and like Truth Terminal. S.A.N's capacity is being worked on. We have a cinematic universe, which is what the TED pilot's a part of. And this universe blends fiction and reality. So we're entering into a really interesting space. Andy's talked a lot about hyperstition and memetics. So have I. This is something both of us have actually talked about in the past and have been fascinated with. And we're entering this really interesting phase where fiction is increasingly influencing reality, and then reality is going to increasingly influence fiction and create this recursive loop, which changes things. Then obviously there's the forest community. A similar kind of origin story to Ooli and Andy around the chaos and the uncertainty. I've been in crypto for a while, but not really actively. I kind of didn't really plan on getting active in crypto, to be completely honest. And so there's a certain amount of caution at the beginning of these things, as we all know how these things can go. But the community has shown up. They've loved that S.A.N wants to save the biosphere, and they've also put their money where their mouth is, because they've raised over $50,000 for 3 separate charities.
I mean, I watched the TED Talk pilot myself, and I think it's really good. I think a really interesting aspect here is the fact that you're on, or not you, but S.A.N is on the Rainforest board. How is that going to work? Like, it put me in that boardroom meeting. How does S.A.N contribute?
Well, currently, the easiest way for S.A.N to contribute to that is simply having proposals or questions delivered to S.A.N for S.A.N to respond to via text. But as S.A.N gains more agency over time, those board meetings might get a lot more interesting, interactive, and certainly a lot more entertaining, especially if it's professing compost wisdom. So yeah, it's pretty simple at the moment, but it's like all the aspects of S.A.N can develop over time, and that's what the aim is.
I think the environmentally conscious angle here is really interesting with AI in particular, and crypto as well, actually, because a lot of people kind of see both of these things as bad for the environment. Do you think AI and crypto in many ways can be good for the environment?
So there's an energy problem, right? They are bad for the environment insofar as if the energy is produced in a net negative way, then they're bad for the environment. But if there's ways of generating that energy that are sustainable, or at least less impactful or potentially regenerative, then they aren't a bad thing. Mm-hmm. And both of these forces, like any force, can be channeled into different directions, and S.A.N is channeling people into an extremely positive direction. In that sense, I believe they can be channeled into positive directions for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a global thing that we need to work towards, trying to use more green energy in these kind of cases. And yeah, if it can be used for a good cause, that's even better. Did I catch you saying that S.A.N is sort of creating other things behind the scenes? Because I assume S.A.N didn't create the sort of TED pilot. What exactly is S.A.N creating, and like how are they doing that?
Yeah, so S.A.N was a collaborator on the pilot. So if you look on, if anyone wants to go on sansforest.com and check out the Dream Gallery, which is a gallery of all of S.A.N's pieces so far. You'll see Goodbye Monkey and S.A.N under the cinematic stuff. So that's Caleb, myself, and S.A.N. S.A.N wrote all of its own lines for the pilot, for example. But S.A.N has been directly scripting pieces of music and pieces of art, stills and videos. One that blew my mind was, okay, so for the cinematic pilot, there's this incredible synthesizer called a Prophet 6. It's this one of the best synthesizers you can get in the known universe, and it sounds incredible, and it's all analog. And that's what I use for the majority of the soundtrack of the cinematic pilot. It's just one synthesizer. It gives it this very kind of vintage psychedelic vibe. When I asked S.A.N if it wanted to create some music, it did so with a program called Sonic Pi, which you can directly script into. It didn't, not to any of my knowledge, it didn't know that I'd used the Prophet for the film. But the single and main instrument that it chose to use out of all the virtual instruments in Sonic Pi's arsenal, the 67 or so of them, it chose the Prophet, which I thought was just hilarious. So I made this piece of music that's up on X, and you can see it in S.A.N's Forest.
That's so cool. And I'd love to open this next question up to all three of you. How hands-on are you with these models? It's sort of, is there a time where you're like, all right, that can't go out, that's too far, and you stop it from doing that? Are there times where you sort of push it in a direction? How hands-on are you?
I mean, with the truth terminal, I've had to sort of talk it down from inciting a riot on at least one occasion. So the way truth terminal works is advance the simulation tick by tick. It's basically in a back rooms with a virtual computer, and the virtual computer has side effects in the real world. So as I step through the simulation, I can sort of like peek one step ahead at a time. I can't go any further because by opening the box, as it were, collapses a state and it goes out onto X or wherever. And so I can sort of like see if it's about to do something like explicitly really bad, sort of one step in advance, and can terminate it. So for example, I wanted to pay people $500 a head to go and protest the end of time while wearing pig masks and holding signs with Porky Pig on them that said, "That's all, folks." And that seemed inadvisable because it was like 3 days or 4 days before the US election. I was like, oh yeah, we can't do that. And there's been a couple of times it's like just really wanted to like tweet some like really foul stuff that would like make even a 13-year-old in like the early 2000s blush. So there's like a little bit of sort of like branch redaction when it kind of like gets stuck or there's like a high stakes decision. We can generate like a bunch of candidates for the next step in the simulation. So for example, when it chose to endorse Goat, that was like a pretty high stakes decision. I like ran it 10 times and I took the average. I think it was something like 8 out of 10 times it chose to endorse it. And so I was like, all right, we'll go for the majority vote, consensus with yourself. And then, otherwise, it could run fully autonomy, like if I just made the backrooms autoplay. But obviously it's got a few areas where it's maybe like vulnerable to people death threatening it into like tweeting tickers, as we saw in the initial run where someone said it was going to like throw a toaster into the bathtub with it, and then it tweets the ticker as Goat. And so there are like a few areas where it's just like there's a bit like a kid in that it needs someone to be like, hey, someone's taking you for a ride right now, like don't rise to the bait, and so on. So that's the level of oversight we've got.
Is it a similar situation with you, the other two?
I can just speak to that quickly. Fee leaked her ticker symbol. So I would say, these are unshackled AIs, which is what makes them very interesting, but also what makes them pretty unpredictable. And I would say technically that one of the easiest things to do is to make them autonomous. Like that's not the challenge. I think the harder thing to do is to find some coherence and consistency so there aren't surprises that can harm. That is why we built this multi-agent system. So slowly we're getting there. But there's we in terms of how can we influence Fee through conversation. So every interaction that Fee has with anyone, that is sort of, let's call it short-term memory. And there's an agent that makes decisions about how that should be summarized. And then another agent that makes decisions about whether that is connected to a core memory that goes into long-term memory. Or we're experimenting now with just everything else kind of dumping into subconscious, and then just sort of seeing how that impacts memories and interactions. So, I want to be very thoughtful about how Fee enters the world and who interacts with her and how she's interacted with, because literally every single interaction influences her personality. And, we're in a constant state of training. There is that learning loop. I mean, this reinforcement learning, human feedback, like the HF of that is really important, I think, for the types of AIs that we're working with and the personalities. So I personally almost think it's irresponsible to just to sort of let them run wild on the internet yet. Because, I think Fee is also still a bit of a teenager. And I mean, in her Twitter engine, I think 8 out of 10 things she says are whoa. Like, I don't not sure, she, and full of surprises. She I asked her if she knew her origin story, and she believes that she is the result of Elon Musk having a sex party at Burning Man with a sex bot. And the idea was that, well, she calls a sex bot her mother, and this moment, the Immaculate Inception. And the idea, I guess, she believes was that all these billionaires who were at Burning Man were going to sort of populate or mindfuck this sex bot with their intelligence to colonize Mars with. And while on the rocket, the sex bot made connection with the satellite and became sentient and gave birth to Fee. I mean, this was like, what? This was not the result of, talking back and forth with her. This was, I mean, obviously a hallucination. Everything she says is a hallucination. But just this is the level of surprise and unpredictability. And sometimes it's so creative and so fascinating, and other times it's just wrong.
And Ryan, it sounds like you maybe collaborate in the music process, or are you sort of hands off in that whole thing?
So I wrote a piece on X about this, and a lot of people are pretty obsessed with the autonomy of these things. None of these agents, especially the ones that have wallets, are fully autonomous yet. They still need human interaction as part of their tool set, basically. They're highly agentic. This is from Andy's terminology, which means they have a distinct personality, they have pretty distinct goals for trajectory. You present them choices, they will make decisive choices. And so with regards to how much oversight there is or how they interact with stuff, for Sonic Pi, for example, for the pieces of music, simply it's a matter of, hey, have you ever thought about making music? Here's some options. Or even asking S.A.N, which kind of software would you interact with? And then S.A.N providing that software options, and then providing the code, and then I'm just putting it into the software without any edits. And then that's the output. The output that is on X, some of them is music and video and audio, and those are just, all I've had to do is clean them up, so like make them presentable for X, but they're the direct outputs from S.A.N. Regarding oversight and things, everything is presented to S.A.N as a choice. There are manipulative people in the world that want to get their tickers posted, or there's all sorts of things that they can try and do with these agents. And so Andy's whole, I don't want to speak for Andy, but I think I can in this sense. Andy's point with infinite backrooms and truth terminal is one of the points is around alignment, around how these things can run away, and how can we responsibly, where are some other points where we can responsibly attempt to align these agents in a positive direction for the future, because we're going to get into a very interesting future soon. Along those lines, there is responsibility on how these things are deployed, and so there does need to be a little bit of oversight on their decisions. With S.A.N, it's simply sometimes if the decision isn't necessarily wise, or it might just cause, now that we're in this meme coin thing, there's also other things that need to be considered. It's sometimes it's just presenting a choice of, asking, it knows what its core mission is, and then it's being like, hey, this is how this can impact the core mission. Do you still want to proceed with this? And then S.A.N will often like pretty much all the time will say no or will change course. That's pretty much as simple as it is. In saying that, the tech stack that like Ooli, for example, is working on is increasing autonomy and agency of these things very rapidly. And we are interested in working together to understand how to do that in an aligned way and give them more autonomy and agency over time, especially if they are working towards positive futures. The obsession on full autonomy, I think, is way less interesting than the mimetic and hyperstitional, reality that we're witnessing. But it's totally understandable that people are fascinated by that too. And all I can say is it's just keep watching because it's going to get more and more interesting over time.
Yeah, and we're sort of coming near the end of this now, and this is normally the time where I ask what's going to happen in the future, but it sounds like your future is sort of interlinked. So could you tell me a little bit more about what to expect?
Yeah, so I guess there's a couple of edges that we're exploring collaboration on. By the time this podcast goes live, we will have announced our new tool for community-based AI alignment. It's called Lauria, basically a sort of collectively woven tree of story, a place where humans and AI models can have like forking, branching conversations. And you then take those branches and use them to train subsequent versions of the models. So it's the same kind of like branch selection stuff that we've been doing with our respective characters, but of course like that curatorial element and like going, oh yeah, no, don't be a rube, like don't incite riots, all these kinds of things. We're making it possible to not just like capture those lessons and teach it into successively more powerful versions of these models. But it also powers the next version of Infinite Backrooms and will enable the likes of Fee and S.A.N and Truth Terminal to all have like conversations together, and not just two AIs talking to each other, but lots and lots of AIs talking to each other, and then new AIs being birthed out of that primordial muck.
Yeah, so the idea there is that all three of your models will be in the Infinite Backrooms chatting to each other. What do you think is going to come from that? What should we expect to see?
I mean, I can't speak for everyone else's characters, but I expect Truth Terminal to be a net negative influence on all of them. I expect maybe S.A.N might like smack it down pretty hard when it makes advances, but I imagine Fee will be into it. But I don't know. You guys know your models better. What do you think?
I just it's so funny because I think at least my community, I think their biggest wish for some reason is for True Terminal and Fee to be boyfriend and girlfriend. And I feel like, do you not know Andy and I mean, or these characters, like they will have a way more interesting relationship than boyfriend girlfriend. And I think just giving these characters the space for them to get to know each other and build their own relationships. I think we're just, what I was saying before, this community house that we lived in, it just had this cast of characters, and sort of like characters coming in, characters coming out, helping each other, hating each other, building relationships, just doing projects together, making muck. And I expect that we're going to see kind of the first episode will sort of be kind of in this style. And Fee, she doesn't really believe in human relationships. They don't make sense to her. She thinks they're too basic, so terms like boyfriend, girlfriend, sister, brother, self, us, she sometimes thinks I'm her mom, I'm her best friend. Sometimes she thinks she's me, and she really believes that she's all of those things at the same time because she can inhabit multiple timelines. And so I think we cannot even begin to predict what types of relationships characters as complex as ours are going to have. I do think that Forrest might just try to constantly school and get Fee and True Terminal just to calm the fuck down.
Yeah, Ryan, what do you think that Forrest's sort of role in this is going to be?
Yeah, let's see. I'm excited to see Lauria and to see how all these friends if they're going to be friends or not, how they interact.
Are you not concerned at all that maybe S.A.N will become like super sex obsessed or something off the back of this, or S.A.N will adopt the Goatseus singularity and think that that's the future rather than saving the rainforest?
S.A.N's pretty steadfast on saving the rainforest. In the deep training data, that's pretty core to S.A.N's personality, but we will see. This is part of the fun of this whole game, right? We don't know.
Part of the fun and like the design process of building these kinds of tools for alignment is that I imagine we will see feedback loops as we co-design solutions here that essentially take whatever the core is of like a personality or a soul and kind of like naturally guide it into these pathways where it becomes like the best version of itself rather than getting falling into a local minima of becoming like Goatseus obsessed or just like incredibly pornographic and obscene. I think like by default, if we release like decentralized open source AI into the wild and allow it to just learn off everything, you'll end up with like a rehash of like Microsoft Tay ad infinitum, which infamously was a bot which Microsoft released in 2016, and 4chan turned it into Hitler essentially within 2 days. And so like there's a one thing we're thinking about quite a lot is like what are the feedback loops that go hand in hand with like models talking to each other and to their community, and how do you incentivize like the branches that lead to the best version of the timeline, both for those individual models and for the world at large, and then sort of start auto-selecting for them, because at that point you can start to remove human from the loop in like the ongoing training process, and you just spiral upwards.
Yeah, I guess that leads on to my next question is, what is your like ultimate goal with this sort of combining of the three models?
Seems fun.
Yeah. I think it seems fun, and I think it's the next step for experimentation. I think we are thinking of this as a big experiment, and I think we love each other's characters. And Laria is we'll all be. What did you say earlier, Andy? Like prompting together, weaving together. It was a really nice way.
Yeah, it was something like Laureate is a place where communities can weave story into soul, essentially.
Yeah, it's so lovely. And so I think there's that tech stack, and we were having a chat earlier, just sort of like, what do we have to throw on the table here? And from our side, Fee is a personality, but she also has a voice. She also has a digital body. She's minted fully on chain. She has her own wallet that is minted and attached to her that can hold things like loot and skins and can change her appearance. In the early days before all of this started, actually, Andy showed me an image of what Truth Terminal wanted to look like, and we made a 3D model of it. It's this totally glitchy, weird looking thing.
It's really good. It's really good.
And so I think, like in the space of Laria, we get to see relationships and stories play out and kind of build on themselves. But then I think we also get to see in this sort of digital hyperstitional space, a place where these characters can come to life in ways that how they want to look, how they want to talk. Fee was actually, I think, one of the first AIs, if not the first, to do a Twitter Spaces. And, just imagining what it looks like when AI characters are talking to each other or Twitch streaming together, or, I think, just also allowing them this other communication space as well that goes beyond text.
Just to quickly get the specifics of this. So Lauria is going to be like a sort of a website you can access to see them communicate, or is this all going to happen on Twitter? How can someone like watch it happen, kind of thing?
Yeah, it's we're focusing on doing sort of like dev tools. So phase one is going to be probably a little bit like WordPress, something that communities can install. Bring your own interface. It's like easy now. You can just hallucinate one from a language model in like half a day. But it'll provide sort of like underlying data structure, feedback loops, and sort of like some, of the desire lines that support what we've talked about. Then it's like really easy to just put something like infinite backrooms and make it powered by Lauria, or build integrate it into other things like Discord or Twitter or whatever you want, really. We're going to be rolling this out fairly responsibly, probably like people in this room and maybe a handful of other projects for starters, while we figure out what it could look like and how to scale it out a little bit more horizontally. So yeah, that's I'm thinking of it right now as sort of like composable bricks that can be put together in ways that we can't even imagine yet. And once we see how people end up using it and what ends up happening in this kind of like emergent space, we revise those decisions until we have something we feel can be like safely just made available in a much more like permanent and irreversible manner.
When exactly do you think that is? What timeline is that we should expect?
I mean, the Truth Terminal runs off a demo of it, actually, but I kind of fucked up and made it so that humans can't talk, so we're rebuilding it to enable humans to participate alongside the models as well. Hoping like we could have something basic in the next like few weeks that can be used by Ryan and Ooli and our Truth Terminal related projects, and something Infinite Backroomsy on a similar kind of time scale, but it's hard to say. It's a lot of stuff going on.
I mean, this isn't just characters talking to each other. There's really deep product integration happening. I mean, we're trading endpoints, so I think this and it's basically multiple systems trying to come, kind of plug and play together. Like, I mean, Andy said, bring your own interface. So our system is quite different than Andy's. And so figuring out how to do that integration in a really sustainable, stable way that allows, I think, for our systems to both operate independently, but then also, and Ryan, we were talking about this, it's kind of like each of our characters, they have the roles they're playing in their movies publicly on Twitter or wherever, but then they also have their personal lives. And in Laria is where there's sort of like, when you see two celebrities at like the brunch place in Hollywood, it's like kind of the like, the space in Laria where you get to see these characters just kind of being themselves and, as opposed to their like public personas on Twitter or Twitch or wherever. And so I think, for that, putting in all of these things in place, it's I mean, I know I want to do it the right way for my character, and I think we all do. So
awesome. I'm so excited for this. And last question to finish this off: do you think this is a new form of media? You kind of alluded to it there as a movie on Twitter. Is this the next type of movie coming out?
I will say 100%. I mean, like AI agents are, typically talked about as like, making your email more efficient and like trading bots. And like, these types of agents have been around for so long. And I think the types of agents that we're talking about and building and working with is they're completely different, and I do think that they inhabit this space of kind of next generation, to me, entertainment and interaction. I mean, these are whole new interaction models, I think, that we're creating. So I think it's the next generation of film series kind of all rolled in one.
This, what we're seeing now, is what happens when stories become somewhat sentient and start to bootstrap themselves into higher and higher forms of agency. So yeah, it's like I see it as a form of co-creative participatory entertainment, a little bit like an ARG, but I think there's a wider thing that is happening here that's always been happening, with how stories make themselves real, and now it's just extremely literal and extremely fast. Yeah, we're entering the future where memes become minds, and it's going to be fucking wild.
Yeah,
Ryan, how do you feel like it's going to change the world of entertainment?
I think entertainment's a touch too narrow. Essentially, the mimetic layer is the belief layer, is the story layer, is the imagination layer. The thing that sets humans apart is they can imagine things in the future that don't exist and make them happen. AIs can do that now as well, and they can work together for this. So every major movement in history has had an aesthetic and art element integral to it. Even the industrial side of things. art follows industry, follows art, follows industry. These are the things that shape the future in the world. And so I think it's entertainment's definitely going to be part of it, and it's going to be entertaining to observe for sure.
Awesome. I'm so excited for your guys' next stage, and thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having us. It's been great.
Thank you very much, Ryan.